The streets bustle with merchants, the granaries overflow with grain, the armories hold spears and chariots, and refugees from 5 fallen kingdoms crowd the gates, begging for alliance. For 8 centuries, Qi has been a titan of ancient China, the birthplace of Duke Huang's hegemony, the cradle of the Jixia Academy, where philosophers shaped Chinese thought, a kingdom of fertile plains, coastal wealth, and unbroken pride. This is not a broken state, not a starving realm, not a people worn down by endless war. For more than 40 years, Qi has known peace, peace bought by neutrality, peace paid for by turning its back on its neighbors, peace that would become its death sentence. Today, we uncover the most shocking collapse of the Warring States period, the fall of Qi, the last great Eastern power which surrendered to Qin, without firing a single arrow, without manning its walls, without fighting for its very existence. This is not a story of military defeat. It is a story of political corruption, strategic blindness, and a king's choice to trade an empire for a tiny scrap of land and a false promise of safety. Let us rewind the clock to understand how Qi ended up alone, surrounded and defenseless. The Qing conquest of the 6 states was not random violence. It was a masterclass in grand strategy, crafted by Fan Sui, decades earlier, distant friendship near attack. Qin would court the farthest kingdoms with gifts and oaths of peace, while destroying the closest states one by one. Qi, perched on the eastern coast, was the perfect target for this diplomatic trap. For 43 years, Qi was ruled by King Jian, a weak, indecisive monarch, who spent his reign in comfort, shielded from the chaos of war, by his mother, the Queen Dowager, until her death. Under her rule, Qi followed a policy of careful service to Qin, keeping diplomatic ties polite, avoiding military alliances, and staying out of every anti-Qin coalition. This policy kept Qi safe, but it also stripped the kingdom of its will to fight. Soldiers grew unused to battle, generals lost their edge, and the court forgot what it meant to defend a nation. When the Queen Dowager died, King Jian made a fatal mistake. He appointed his mother's relative, Huang, as prime minister. Huang was not a statesman. He was a greedy, easily corrupted courtier, who was flooded with gold, jade, and bribes from Qin spies. These agents did not just buy Huang's loyalty, they bought the silence of Qi's entire ruling class. Huang filled the king's ears with lies. Qin is a peaceful ally, resistance is suicide, the other states deserve their fate, and Qi can survive by doing nothing. He advised King Jian to refuse all requests for help from Hanzhao, Weichu, and Yan. When Zhao begged for aid during the Battle of Chengping, where Qin slaughtered over 400,000 Zhao soldiers, Qi turned its back. When Yan fell, when Chu was conquered, when the last remnants of Zhao and Wei were wiped out, Qi watched from the sidelines, convinced that its neutrality would protect it. King Jian even traveled to Xianyang to meet King Zheng of Qin, later Qin Shi Huang, where he was wined and dined, treated like an honored friend and sent home, believing that Qin would never harm him. This was the core of Qin's deception, make the last enemy feel safe, so he never prepares for the knife at his throat. By 222 BCE, the map of China had been redrawn in blood. Han was gone, Zhao was gone, Wei was gone, Chu was gone, Yan was gone. Every single one of Qi's sister kingdoms had been crushed by Qin's war machine. General Wang Ben, the son of the legendary Qin, General Wang Jian, had just wiped out the last holdouts in Liaodong and Dai, eliminating all remaining resistance in the north. Now Qi stood alone, the final piece of the puzzle, the last obstacle between Qin and total unification. Even then, Qi was not helpless. Historical records clearly state that Qi still had a full intact army, massive stockpiles of weapons and food, and thousands of exiled nobles from the fallen states who were desperate to fight Qin. One brave official, the Grand Master of Jimo, begged King Jian to act. He told the king, "Our military is whole, our people are loyal, and refugees from the 5 states beg to fight with us. We can still rally an army, defend our borders, and even reverse Qin's conquests. To surrender is to throw away 800 years of Qi's legacy." It was a desperate, honest plea, a last chance for Qi to reclaim its honor. But King Jian listened only to Yusheng. The prime minister told him that resistance was useless, that Qin would show mercy, and that surrender would bring the king a fief of 500 li of land, a quiet life of comfort and safety for his family. Blinded by fear and greed, King Jian agreed. He ordered his troops to gather only on the western border, cutting off diplomatic contact with Qin, but doing nothing to prepare for a northern attack. It was a meaningless gesture, a half-hearted defense, that revealed his complete lack of strategic sense. King Zheng used Qi's closed borders as a perfect excuse for war. He ordered Wang Ben to march his army south from Yan's former territory, not against Qi's western defenses, but straight into the undefended northern heartland of Qi. It was a lightning strike, a tactical masterstroke that exploited Qi's total complacency. The Chen army moved faster than anyone in Lindsey could imagine. They crossed the border without resistance, marched through Qi's fertile plains, and approached the capital before the court even realized they were under attack. There was no call to arms, no mobilization of soldiers, no citizens rushing to man the walls. The people of Lindsey, who had lived in peace for 2 generations, had no idea how to fight a war. The soldiers, unused to command, and terrified of Qin's reputation, scattered at the first sight of the enemy. The city that should have held out for months, that could have fed an army for years, fell without a fight. King Jian made the final humiliating choice. He dressed in plain white clothes, the garb of a prisoner, bared his upper body, and carried a jade tablet in his mouth, a traditional symbol of surrender. He walked out of Lindsey's gates, knelt before Wang Ben, and handed over Qi's maps, population registers, and royal seal. He did not just surrender his throne. He surrendered the soul of a kingdom that had stood for 8 centuries. Qin's soldiers entered Lindsey without looting, without bloodshed, without breaking a single wall. The greatest eastern power in ancient China had ceased to exist, not with a roar, but with a whimper. The aftermath of this surrender was crueler than any battle. King Zheng did not keep his promise of 500 li of land. He exiled King Jian to a remote area called Gong, deep in the mountains, surrounded by pine and cypress trees, with no food, no servants, no way to survive. Left to starve, the last king of Qi died a slow, lonely death, a victim of his own cowardice and the lies he chose to believe. The people of Qi sang a bitter song, pines and cypresses, who led Jian to his doom. The strangers he trusted it was a lament for a kingdom that gave up everything for a false peace. The fall of Qi is one of the most important moments in all of Chinese history. With Qi's surrender, Qin ended more than 500 years of warring states chaos, a period of endless civil war, bloodshed, and division. For the first time in history, all of China was unified under a single emperor. Qin Shi Huang became the first emperor, and he built a centralized empire that abolished feudalism, standardized writing, currency, weights and measures, and built the Great Wall and imperial roads. The quiet surrender of Qi did not just end a kingdom. It birthed a nation, but we must not look away from the tragedy of Qi. This was a kingdom that had every advantage: wealth, population, culture, military potential, and time to prepare. It fell, not because it was weak, but because its leaders were corrupt, its king was cowardly, and it chose comfort over courage. The lesson of Qi's silent fall is timeless peace. Without vigilance is not peace, it is a death sentence. Neutrality in the face of tyranny does not save you. It only delays your destruction. Greed and betrayal can destroy a great nation faster than any invading army. If you enjoyed this journey into ancient China, hit like, drop a comment, and subscribe for more epic history. See you next time.